My process of developing my art started with actually following brain surgery for a brain infection I got many years ago, and which I lost the left use of my left arm and my left leg and had speech problems and seizures. And during rehabilitation to overcome those disabilities, I turned to photography, which I'd done as a teenager, just as a hobby. Realizing I don't have time enough left in my life to become a painter, a good painter, photography seemed like to be the best way to go, and especially these days with digital photography, it's perfect for a person like me because it's much more forgiving, and I don't have to wait a week for the films to come back. I can get immediate feedback on what I'm doing. In focusing on small areas, small items, I realized that I could actually blow them up and modify them, and I could turn them into, let's say, abstract art, which to me was actually far more interesting than just taking a picture of a flower or a bird or things like that. So then I started to go into more abstract photography.
This particular piece showing at Pegasus Gallery is something that I saw. I saw a piece of glass that was beautiful. It was called grenadine wispy. And it looked like fire and flames to me, but I needed something, I needed to modify it. And then I saw the bricks and I saw the firewall. And so I used a grenadine wispy on clear, and then I used a grenadine wispy on white. And I made sure that what would be called mortar between bricks was soft, clear glass, just I guess to give more emphasis to the fire and less to the mortar. I allowed it to drip out the edges for just a little more substance, I guess. And it was one of my first pieces once I started fusing, and I'm very pleased with the way it turned out. It means a lot to me.
It's difficult creating most of these pieces because, well, like any original art piece, it's entirely new or novel. And so I have to find the sweet spot in something where an electric arc, which I use in a lot of my pieces, leaps from one point to another. And that just doesn't happen by accident. So the distance has to be right, the voltage has to be whatever. And so it's difficult because it's so time-consuming. It's trial and error, finding these distances. The piece that we were just referring to has got what's called a Jacob's ladder inside of a light bulb, and that was originally an electrical device that relieved excess voltage back in the turn of the 20th century. It was just a crude way of getting rid of excess voltage, and it's two antennas, you might say, and an arc climbs in up between. Almost everybody's seen one, but anyway, that kind of stuff fascinates me, but it's almost impossible to get it to work because there's no books, there's no math. You just have to keep moving those rods back and forth a little bit and seeing when the arc catches and then when it rises, because if they're too far apart, it won't rise, and if they're too close together, it will just sit in one place and heat up. So all these pieces are rather difficult to figure out how to get an awesome effect out of them, which is my goal. Get some effect that people really smile at and go, oh, how did he do that? Usually the person who walks up to this and operates it correctly the first time is about 10 years old. Never has an adult walked up and figured out how to do this.
So far as my work process goes, it kind of varies depending on the project itself, but specifically for the pieces that are in the show, I have two different processes. For my sculptural light pieces, my process is primarily like a reductive one, thinking about the idea of like light and space and movement of people in that space. The way that the light moves across both the wall and across like one's own body, and the shifting from cool to warm to essentially like glowing under the black light. Like, intentionally arrange those lights in ways that hopefully encourage the movement back and forth between the work, but also like show the variations of like what we think of as standard light. Like, a lot of my work is trying to elevate the mundane. For the digital art that I've been working on, the glitch pieces, my process with those was essentially trying to build on a kind of randomness, or allow like the computer itself to be primary mover of the pieces, I guess. Like giving up more of my own power as the artist to like the technology to allow it to create.
I like to work with a variety of media. I have kind of my dance practice and painting practice, but when I'm dancing I like to incorporate sculptures in space as well. So I'll build large-scale sculptures for dance and movement, and a lot of that is improvisational movement with these sculptures that are on wheels, and they have moving parts and hinges, and yeah, so that's playing with space and time in a performative way. And painting's a lot different than that because all the process takes place in the studio, and it doesn't have that performative aspect, but I do find that both practices inform each other. So the piece False Summit, it works with a couple different picture elements, and so I've incorporated this image of a mountaineer on climbing, and then it also brings together this image that I took of a porch at this house that I lived in. So when I'm choosing the pictures that end up in these paintings, I choose them fairly randomly in the beginning, and I kind of find their relationship as I'm working through the painting. And I'm really interested in the idea of painting light and creating this thing that we see all around us all the time, light interacting with other objects, and kind of making that up out of pigment and this a material that doesn't itself make light, but you're kind of just making an illusion of that.
My process for making my pieces generally comes from trying to reflect the conflict within humanity that is based upon the object versus the illusion of self, so the conceived self. In doing so, I try and make a painting that is both physical and relates to the viewer in a physical, spatial manner, as well as illusory, as they react to it emotionally within their head. So the materials I used in this piece specifically for the Pegasus show were more of a means to an end. I think the part that relates to technology is more of the illusionary image, in which I am deconstructing text, stripping it of all semantics, so it's just this visual symbol of text. And then using color, using decollage and collage, as well as light, to try and create a visual connotation to this image of text.
I actually make neon, so I'm producing the glass. It's a glass blowing process, and then the tubes are filled with gas or plasma, and they are processed through that. That's a process of using fires, using electricity, and using gases such as neon, argon, krypton, helium. And those gases, once they're electrified, become a plasma, which is the fourth state of matter. You have your gas, liquid, solid, and then plasma. In the work that I do with representing planets or some stars or the sun or the moon or microbiology, I try and get an abstract of those, kind of a representation. I'm trying to get some kind of action and hold it. I'm trying to, see something. How I want to exactly describe it, sometimes I'm at a loss to do that, but sometimes I feel I get it when I make a sculpture, and it seems to me to have this Is it a message? Is it a statement? It's kind of a snapshot of energy, I think. That's one of the reasons I use neon as a medium, because it's kind of vibrant and kind of mysterious.
So my work process starts with an idea. Lately, I've been working with contemporary issues, trying to think of social, political, environmental, all these kind of issues kind of coming together. For this particular piece, it started off with an idea of the culmination of human progress and the building up of artificial intelligence, and creating a piece that expresses some of the concerns and desires by people and how this is going to manifest in the human experience in the future. So it started off with that idea, that was the beginning, and then the process evolved, and I started thinking about how we think about technology, how we relate with technology. So the woman is a symbol of like Siri or Alexa. We feminize technology to make it more approachable, to make it more universal, because it's less intimidating, it's more agreeable. This piece directly looks at what is happening in the human experience and what is going to happen in the human experience. And it's a study. It's not just my thoughts. I've been doing a lot of research and trying to understand how powerful this technology of artificial general intelligence. Right now we have our smartphones and Siri, that's an artificial intelligence. But when we generalize, when we start manipulating and emulating the human brain and that type of software, the computing power behind a general artificial intelligence is going to change the world in a way that I think is really underappreciated by a lot of people. And the goal of this piece was to talk to people about this. I want the human species to survive, and I want people to thrive on this earth. So I think that we need to approach this problem level-headed and before we invent the technology, rather than after the fact.